When you're looking at a camera that promises broadcast-grade quality for a live-streamed show, the first feeling is usually a mix of excitement and a little bit of dread. You've probably seen a few slick demo reels, but you also wonder if you'll end up with a piece of gear that sits on a shelf because it's too finicky, or because you can't get the picture you need in a dimly lit room. That's why I'm going to walk through the Blackmagic Design Micro Studio Camera 4K G2 the way I would if I were buying it for my own production crew, looking at real-world workflow, the actual strengths you'll feel day to day, and the places where it might leave you reaching for something else. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, the Micro Studio camera is built squarely for the kind of multi-camera live environment you'd see in a small TV studio, a church broadcast, or a professional-looking YouTube studio. It's not marketed as a run-and-gun vlog camera, so the design choices reflect that. The body is compact, but it still offers the full suite of SDI, HDMI, and timecode connections that make it easy to drop into a lip reduction switcher without needing a separate converter box. For anyone who's ever tried to rig a consumer cam into a live workflow, you know how much time you can lose hunting for the right adapters. Here, Blackmagic has already done the heavy lifting, which translates into a smoother setup on the day of the shoot. If you're a beginner who's never touched a camera that outputs SDI, the learning curve can feel steep. The menu system, while not overwhelming, does have a few extra layers compared to a point-and-shoot. You'll spend a minute or two navigating through the input and format pages to make sure you're outputting the correct resolution for your switcher. In practice, though, once you lock in your settings, they stick, and you rarely need to dive back in unless you change lenses or switch to a different production format. That's a practical strength. The camera remembers your preferences, which is a huge time saver in a live environment. Autofocus on the Micro Studio camera is one of those features that can make or break a live production. Blackmagic opted for a fast, contrast detect system that works well when you have a clear, high-contrast subject, like a presenter in front of a solid backdrop. In a typical studio interview scenario, the focus locks within a second and stays solid even if the talent moves a foot or two. However, if you try to use it in a more dynamic setting, say, a live music performance where the artist is moving across the stage under variable lighting, you'll notice the focus hunting a bit. The camera doesn't have the predictive eye tracking you find on some higher-end cinema cams, so you'll need to either switch to manual focus or keep the movement predictable. For a hobbyist who just wants a set-it-and-forget-it experience with a single static shot, that limitation could be a deal-breaker. Low light performance is another practical consideration. The sensor is a 4K Super 35 design, which means it can pull decent detail in moderately dim rooms, but it does start to introduce noise once you dip below about 1 lux. In a church setting where the ambient light is intentionally low, you'll likely need to add a few LED panels to keep the image clean. The good news is that the camera's color science, which Blackmagic is known for, handles those added lights gracefully, delivering skin tones that look natural without a lot of post-grade tweaking. If you're planning on streaming from a home office with just a desk lamp, you might find yourself fighting the noise more than you'd like. Stabilization is something you won't find built into the Micro Studio camera. It's a studio-oriented rig, so the expectation is that you'll mount it on a tripod, a shoulder rig, or a ceiling-mounted system. That means you have to be comfortable with external stabilization solutions. If you were hoping for an all-in-one handheld unit that smooths out a few steps, you'll be disappointed. On the other hand, the lack of internal gimbals keeps the body lightweight and reduces the power draw, which leads us straight into battery competence. Battery life on this model is surprisingly respectable. The unit runs on a single Sony NPF 970 battery, and in typical 1080p livestream mode you can expect around 5 to 6 hours of continuous operation. In a full-day shoot with a few breaks, you'll probably need to swap batteries once or twice, but the hot swap capability means you can do that without powering down. That's a practical strength for anyone running a multi-hour live event. You won't be stuck watching a red battery icon while the audience is waiting for the next segment. Just remember that if you push the camera into 4K at higher frame rates, the draw goes up and you'll see the runtime shrink to roughly 3 hours. Lens choice is where the Micro Studio camera really shines, provided you already have a collection of compatible lenses.